European leaders say digital sovereignty is becoming a strategic priority. The term refers to Europe's ability to control its own data, cloud services and technology infrastructure without relying too heavily on foreign providers. The push has gained urgency amid trade tensions with the US and growing security concerns over Russia. Since 2017, the market share by US cloud providers in Europe has continued to climb, reaching more than 80% in 2025. That level of dependence has raised concerns over its digital future. The European Union now wants to move beyond regulation and combine it with large-scale strategic investment. France recently announced it will roll out its own government-developed video conferencing platform Visio as an alternative to US tools like Microsoft Teams and Zoom. Taiwan and China together handle around 65% of global outsourced chip assembly and testing. In response, the European Chips Act is expected to mobilize more than $90 billion in combined public and private investment, according to EU Commission estimates. The goal is to double Europe's share of global chip production to 20% by 2030. Fresh proposals on cloud and AI development are due later this quarter, with plans to sharply increase Europe's data center and computing capacity over the next 5 years. For more on this, we're joined by Dennis Kenji Kipker. He's Research Director at Cyber Intelligence Institute. Welcome to the program, Dennis. Now, with US cloud providers now controlling more than 80% of Europe's market, how realistic is the EU's push for digital sovereignty without disrupting the current business ecosystems?
Yeah, so digital sovereignty is realistic if it's treated as a risk reduction and freedom of choice, and not as an overnight rip and replace. So in Europe, we see cloud infrastructure market. There's a research that estimates European providers at about 15% currently, and the top 3 US hyperscalers at about 70%. And this means any sovereignty strategy in the European Union that avoids disruption will prioritize portability, exit plans, and moving the most sensitive workloads first, rather than trying to fully displace incumbents in one go.
And do you think Europe is too late in joining the game and developing its own digital industries?
No, not really. So Europe is late in some layers, notably hyperscale platforms and certain consumer ecosystems, but it's not too late in general in the sense of having no viable path at all. The realistic play is to scale where Europe can win on trust, compliance, industrial depth of certain technologies, public sector collaboration tooling, regulated industries, and identity and security, as well as open standards and interoperability, which is also currently discussed. And I see a lot of markets there in the European Union as well when it comes to sovereignty.
Now, the European Union will still have to outsource a lot in terms of infrastructure. How does that complicate things in becoming independent?
Yes, so having to outsource parts of the catch-up effort complicates sovereignty, of course, because you can import not just technology, but dependency as well. That means contract terms, update control, roadmap power, even jurisdictional exposure, and supply chain choke points. And this is also currently debated. And also risks locking in IT architectures before European alternatives mature, raising also the cost of switching later and making sovereignty, what we are currently talking about, more about governance mechanisms than about the vendor's passport we are talking about.
And France has announced it's rolling out its own video conferencing platform. Do you see that as a genuine alternative to the US?
Yeah, I think France Visio rollout looks like a genuine, very concrete step, at least for government use cases, which are of high importance when we are talking about digital sovereignty. So Paris announced a phased move to domestically developed platform and an intention to generalize it across government by 2027 as a replacement for Teams, Zoom in any kind of official context. And whether it becomes a European-wide alternative depends, in my opinion, on how far it extends beyond French administration. So it's both promising, but also still early for broader market impact.
Dennis Kenji Kipker, Research Director at Cyber Intelligence Institute in Frankfurt. Thank you very much for joining us.